Well, good morning. Welcome to the Pondering Infinity webcast. Today is February 11th, 2022. This is episode 6 of the Pondering Infinity webcast. I'm going to jump right into the financials. Bitcoin is at 43,238.27. XRP is at 80.6 cents. XLM's at 22.6 cents. Doge is at 15.1 cents. And then the Dow is at, down. 34,745.60. Down almost 500. NASDAQ is at 13,852, down 331. S&P is at 4422.42. Crude oil is at 92.03. That's up. And gold is at 1858.60. Silver is at 29.79. I forgot to mention it is about 1:45 in the afternoon on February 11th. And if you're watching, as you can see on the screen, I'm playing with some new gadgets in the software. So I have that intro screen. I can toggle that off. I'll keep that off right now. So I wanted to get this out of the way as well first. Please like, subscribe, and share anywhere you're listening to me if you find any of my content is interesting. I am trying to broaden my reach, of course. I keep coming up with these ideas, and I say it at work and say it at home. I'm gonna break the internet. I'm gonna interview Elon Musk, and I got this great idea. I'm gonna break the internet. But the only way I can break the internet is if I get the word out and more people listen and we actually make a difference and get things done together. So help me, please. Help me break the internet. I've got so much stuff to talk about. So another pretty cool feature I just discovered on this thing, I could set up hotkeys so I can pause the video. Somebody commented that I need to not cough into the mic. I totally agree. I'm trying to reduce the amount of editing, so I'm probably going to be using this hotkey to pause it rather than trying to fumble for the mouse. So I'm going to try it right now. Boom, I'm back. Uh-oh. That wasn't supposed to be there. Oh, that's a dangerous thing. Okay, I need to look at the hotkeys. Somebody asked me why I'm wearing a hat inside. As you can see, I'm still inside and still in my spare bedroom. Somebody else commented about that. I need to get some decorations. But why am I wearing a hat inside? Ever since I had my surgery, my weight loss surgery, I stay cold all the time. Before I had surgery, I was always hot, always sweating, as you can imagine, with that extra weight. But now it's 180 degrees, polar opposite. I am freezing, and I work overnight in an not climate-controlled area. I mean, we do have a little bit of heat, but it's not very. So I bundle up. I'm wearing hats and sometimes gloves, 2 pairs of socks at night. But since my weight loss surgery, it's just I'm always cold. And I'm kind of excited about this. I reached out to the doctor that did my surgery and wanted to interview him and sit down and chat. And he agreed. He's down with it. So we're gonna come up with a time, hopefully very soon. I'd really like to sit down and talk about specifically weight loss surgery and my issues, but also he enjoys some scotch, so maybe we'll sit down and talk about some esoteric stuff as well. He's a really cool guy. So I'm going to get that done and see where we go. So is that live? I don't know if I'm recording now. I had to switch the hotkeys and because it kept going to that screen selections. Okay, that looks like it's a little better. So wanted to, I opened my rings on the recording last time, and Angela got home that day, and I was sternly reprimanded because those were supposed to be my Valentine's Day gifts, and I opened them. Not only did I open them early, I opened them on the recording. She was not happy, so I'm sorry, Angela. I know you said you told me, but I don't remember, and you ought to know that by now. Also, I went to, we got the Jeep towed, and finally got it down to the repair shop. Took a look at it and went down to pick it up, and they were very gracious and kept a straight face, tried not to laugh. But apparently the guy that replaced the caliper on the front passenger side wheel either didn't tighten the bolt all the way down or didn't put a bolt in, and so the caliper came off and locked up the wheel. Thankfully, it didn't do much damage. But I want to give a shout out to Speedy Oil Change, Tire, and Auto Care on Marietta Highway in Canton. Not only did they not laugh profusely at me, because I went to them before to diagnose, because the Jeep was making a different noise, and I took it to Christian Brothers locally, and they were telling me that I needed a new wheel bearing. So I went and took it to Speedy, and they hooked it up to a monitor or something, a scope, listened to it, and they said that no, there's nothing wrong with the wheel bearing. So that's what led me to do the repair myself, take the wheel off, and I found the caliper had a seized up bolt in it, so I put a new caliper on it. While I had Ethan and Elijah out there helping me, I guess they did say something, because they both said, "Hey, there's a bolt on the ground. How do you have an extra piece?" And I guess I might have thought that was from the old caliper, and didn't think anything about it. It worked for a week or so, 2 weeks, but then it seized up. So not only did they not laugh at me, but they didn't charge me anything for putting a bolt in. They said they had an extra one lying around, and they didn't charge me anything. So Speedy Oil Change will be coming back to y'all for our next vehicle repairs. Very honest people. I appreciate that. So thank you. So today I wanted to talk about something that I feel very strongly about, and I have for quite a while. I want to discuss briefly the CBD. CBD and all things associated with CBD. So back in 2015, I had my first of 2 motorcycle accidents. And then less than 9 months later, I had my second one. The second was far worse, but in both of them, I broke several ribs. In the second one, I broke several ribs in 2 places on the same rib, so that's called a flail chest. And they had to go in and plate my ribs. I broke my collarbone. They put some screws in my collarbone. So I had months and months. If you've ever had broken ribs, you know they don't really do anything for it. They have to heal. So I had months of recuperation, healing, and a lot of pain. And I was on oxy for a while. It was that much pain. It took the edge off, but it never really did more than that. So a couple years later, I was introduced to CBD. One of Angela's, I believe, a nurse friend, was selling CBD in a multi-level marketing. And so we tried it, and I had never really slept well, and I knew I was overweight, and I knew I had probably had sleep apnea. But that night, the first night that we tried this CBD oil, it was a tincture. You put it under your tongue and you let it sit there for 15 seconds, and it gets absorbed. The first night, I actually slept restfully through the night, probably 8 hours. And from that point, I was hooked. Up to that point, with the motorcycle wrecks, I was only getting about 3 or 4 hours of sleep. I just couldn't get comfortable, or just couldn't sleep. The side effects of all the drugs, pharmaceuticals. And I took this CBD, and that night I was hooked. And I signed up for the network marketing company and just went to town. So at that was the point that the hemp oil man came into being. I still do the CBD. So if you'd like to support the podcast, and another way to do that besides fabrictitan.com is thehempoilman.com. That'll take you to my network marketing, multi-level marketing page. And I only say that because I firmly believe everybody should at least try CBD. If you don't try it from me, try it from somebody else. And the rest of this discussion is going to go into a little more in depth of what CBD is and why CBD. But I only urge you, do your own research, and don't necessarily believe everything that you hear in vape shops, or we'll get to some of it, but just caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Anytime you're going into any of this. So a little history of CBD. So in 1992, the endocannabinoid system was discovered. So it's only been relatively recently discovered, and scientists, they don't know what they don't know, and they're still doing research into it, but there's only a small amount of research being put into this, where there could be huge, enormous benefits today if we would just put more research into this. And I'm not a scientist, and this is all just from research, so like I said before, just don't take my word for it. Research it. If you find that I'm wrong in an area, then I'm more than willing to retract it. I just do some of this research, especially back then when I was getting started. I was doing a lot of this research, but so there's more receptors in the body of CBD receptors than any other kind of receptors. So starting this, let me go over here to receptor locations, putting some stuff up on the screen, trying out this software, these features that I can do. But so the endocannabinoid receptor locations. So there's CB1 receptors, and those are all listed there. Nerve cells in the brain, spinal cord, peripheral organs, spleen, white blood cells, endocrine glands, gastrointestinal tract, and urinary tracts. And then CB2 receptors are in white blood cells, tonsils, spleen, and immune cells. So these are receptors that pick up on this CBD, and it picks up on the brain. So there is the body produces cannabinoids on their own. So anandamide, which is created when you're meditating. It's called the bliss molecule. And 2-AG is another cannabinoid that the body produces. And both of these cannabinoids are released in the mother's milk when the mother is breastfeeding. So, you can see why babies are so happy when they're breastfeeding, among other reasons, I guess. There are over 100 different cannabinoids that we know of right now, including the most popular one, CBD, CBG, CBDA, CBD or CBN, and THCA, which we'll get more into later on. But all these are cannabinoids, and they all can be used to, you can't say treat, to, I heard a noise behind me. I look back, and Sam, one of our cats, is chewing on the coax cable in this room. So the CBD can be used to help alleviate symptoms of, all different things: depression, anxiety. It's a whole broad range of benefits that you can receive from CBD oil. We'll just leave it at that. So, there's different kinds of CBD. So there's tinctures. So there's full spectrum, broad spectrum, and isolate. And up on the screen there is a graph that summarizes the difference. So full spectrum contains CBD, contains THC, contains flavonoids and terpenes. So flavonoids are a diverse group of phytonutrients, plant chemicals found in almost all fruits and vegetables. And terpenes are aromatic compounds found in many plants. Commonly associate them with cannabis because cannabis plants contains a high concentration of them. So that's what gives them their scent. So full spectrum CBD contains all four: CBD, THC, flavonoids, and terpenes. If you go to broad spectrum, so broad spectrum takes out the THC, so you're left with CBD, flavonoids, and terpenes. And then if you go to an isolate is only CBD. It doesn't have any THC, flavonoids, or terpenes. So this is important when you're going to look for the kind of CBD that you want to take. It's important to know the differences between the two, so when somebody says broad spectrum or full spectrum, you know what they're talking about. Currently in the United States, in order to be sold legally, it has to contain less than 0.3% of THC. So these days you can, and one of the reasons I stopped really doing the hemp oil man is because now you can get CBD everywhere. And the problem I was running into is that you had to order it from me versus just go down to a local vape store and pick it up. The differences are, one, your local vape store cashier isn't really doing the research. Maybe they are, but most likely they're not doing the research into all these differences, what they mean, how to identify, how to know what you're getting. And also a big thing that I would recommend everybody doing if you're buying CBD or whatever you're buying is look at the test results, because the test results from any manufacturer, one, they should have test results and be willing to provide them to you. If they don't, whether it's a QR code or you can go online or do it or whatever it is, but you need to understand what you're looking at. So to ask the vape store employee what any of that means, it's a roll of the dice. It's a crapshoot. But in the test results, you should always look at, and because they're going to identify what's in it and more importantly, or maybe more importantly, what's not in it. So heavy metals, or you're going to want to look for the extraction method. The cannabinoids are not water soluble, so they have to be broken down by some other method. The good methods are using like coconut oil or glycerin or things like that break it down and extract it to make a tincture. But that's generally too slow for people producing for a profit, so they use chemicals, and some of the chemicals that are used are butane. So, and then they go through a wash, and you can argue that they wash all the butane out, but it's still a risk if it's extracted with butane. When you go to ingest it, you could be ingesting some chemicals, and that's why the test results are important, because they'll show if there's any residual materials left over from the extraction method, or if there's any other stuff in it. But the THC content, that's an important distinction to make right now. There's a great video that breaks down how CBD affects the body versus pharmaceuticals, and I have a link to the video right here. It's ponderinginfinity.com/CBD. Ponderinginfinity.com/CBD. It's up on the screen. And that is, that'll go to my YouTube channel, and there's a great video. I think it's about 18 minutes long, and explains homeostasis and, how difficult it is. So when you take CBD, it takes a while to build up in your system, to return your body to homeostasis. So a big challenge that I had when I was talking to people about taking CBD instead of, weaning off the pharmaceuticals, was that the pharmaceuticals give you instant gratification. And in today's society, we all know that's what a lot of people are looking for. Just you have a headache, you take a Tylenol, and it goes away. And so this video explains how that may, while that's good, that puts your body out of homeostasis. And this goes through and explains how CBD does. So like I was saying, one of the biggest challenges I had was people didn't get that immediate gratification. It took, depending how far your body is out of whack. So when I took it, my body was so far out of whack that I felt that immediate change, because it was trying to get me back in, and it was. So I'm not sure how to explain it, but I have a feeling that depending on how far your body is out of homeostasis and it'll react to the CBD differently. So when I took it, I immediately felt the effect of sleep. But to build up over time, if you're using it for different things, anti-inflammatory, or maybe not a sleep aid, but pain management, it takes time to build up into your system. And these bottles are 30-day bottles if you're taking a dropper full. So sometimes, I was going through 2 bottles a month when I was doing it to wean off of the oxy, and I was, going through that much, but it wasn't an instant gratification. It took that long to get that built up in my system, and most people just don't have the patience or don't want to wait that long, or if they don't see the immediate results, they want to move on to something else. And I understand that, but I'm saying taking CBD requires some patience and delayed gratification to get rid of this, and the long-term benefit over the short-term pop. So like I said, this ponderinginfinity.com/CBD, it has a great video of homeostasis. It is something I kind of edited together, so it's got my branding in it for the hempoilman.com. If you are so inclined, if you're looking for some good CBD oil, this is the stuff that I'm selling on. I mean, I do sell some still, but Angela does take CBD as a sleep aid. She describes it as helping slow her mind down so she can get to sleep. She's going 1,000,000 miles an hour during the day, and she needs something to just decompress and unwind. So she's using the CBD. So now that I got that shameless plug in there, if you want to support me, that's two ways: the hempoilman.com or fabrictitan.com. So I wanted to take a minute now and go down a little bit different vein, and what's becoming more popular these days. In Georgia here, we don't have legalized recreational marijuana. I think there's something maybe that we have medicinal marijuana, but you can't get it, or you can't transport it, or you can't grow it, or something. I don't know. We're still behind the times. But it popping up more and more in vape shops are all these Delta 8 and Delta 10. So I wanted to diverge a little bit from CBD and go down this path. So the cannabis plant yields in the cannabis family, I guess. Again, I'm not a scientist, but the cannabis family, there's hemp and there's marijuana. So hemp doesn't have the THC, and the marijuana does have the THC. So one of the big things that with the making the CBD in the broad spectrum, full spectrum, if you have to remove the THC, it would seem much easier to start with the plant that doesn't have the THC to begin with, so you don't have to necessarily work as hard to remove that. So with hemp being, and hemp's been around, of course, for forever, but the 2014 Farm Bill made hemp-derived CBD legal in all 50 states, and then I think there's another Farm Bill in 2018 that even broadened the legality of doing all this. I don't know which one allowed. I think Kentucky is huge in hemp production or hemp growing. When I was doing the CBD oils, they had, I think the one company had they both had locally, grown hemp in the United States. A lot of companies import their hemp from China, I would imagine, or other countries. So you really have to be careful where they're getting their hemp from. But both the companies that I represented had hemp farms in the United States, and they were growing them, and you could go visit them, with an appointment. But so the Farm Bill blew that wide open, and now hemp is a huge industry. So the government seems to love three-letter acronyms, except when it has to deal with cannabis and things that actually benefit society. So the government doesn't like you to talk about THC and all the benefits. So what is THC? THC is tetrahydrocannabinol. Now there's different forms of THC. Not everybody knows. When you hear THC, you probably most commonly associate it with Delta 9 THC, which is the psychoactive cannabinoid in cannabis, in marijuana. But hemp is cannabis, and marijuana is cannabis. So cannabis is like the top level, and then it goes down and breaks down. But there's Delta 9 THC, but recently we've heard Delta 8 and Delta 10 in vape shops. And so the difference is where in the chain of chemicals the double bond occurs. So there's in delta 8 it occurs in the 8th carbon atom. And again, I'm not a scientist, this is just from my research. So delta 9 is the 9th carbon atom, delta 10 is the 10th carbon atom. And we'll get back to that in a second, but I just wanted to touch on two more things that are popping up in vape shops that should be very, very cautious about. So THCO is a new thing that's popping up, and that is delta 8 THC, and they add acetate anhydride to it. Acetate anhydride. Now, I don't know what that is, so I looked it up, and it's acidic anhydride appears as a clear, colorless liquid with a strong odor of vinegar. The flash point at 129 degrees Fahrenheit. It's corrosive to metal and tissues, and it's used to make fibers, plastics, pharmaceuticals, dyes, and explosives. THCO is supposed to be 3 times as strong as delta 9 THC. Now, if you think that the government is on your side in protecting your best interests, THCO, its full name is THCO acetate, and the earliest research dates back to American military experiments on non-lethal incapacitating agents in the 1940s. I thought this was fascinating. Researchers tested the compounds on dogs, and at the end of the experiment, the dogs had lost significant control of their motor functions. So with THCO. So this is okay. This is not okay to test on anybody, or dogs. But back in the 1940s, but now THCO is coming out and it's being allowed to come into vape shops. These experiments were using this THCO as a weapon. So I just don't understand it. And then Flashpoint, that's what I wanted to talk about too. So this extraction method, so you take delta 8 and you add that acetate anhydride. People were mixing it up in their homes, and the flash point's 129 degrees, and they were blowing themselves up like a meth lab. It's just ridiculous to the extent we go to. The other thing that's popping up in vape shops is HHC. So that's hexahydrocannabinol. Man, I cannot get that. Cannabinol. I haven't done much research on this because there's not much out there. This is relatively new, but some sources indicate that there's no evidence that this is present in any cannabis plant. So there's some sort of synthetic aspect to this. I don't know, but just FYI, my recommendation would be to avoid it. So getting back to Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10. Delta 8 and Delta 10 are relatively new. They are popping up very prevalent in vape shops. So I wanted to go into a little bit of my understanding of how, I don't know if it's the chemistry or how it works to get into your body and affect you. So there's a process called carboxylation, I believe, and that's when, my understanding is when it does that chemical conversion, whether if you're smoking it or vaping it, or you have to, when you make a tincture, you have to heat up the hemp to release these compounds, to convert them to THCA to THC, and that process is, I believe, called carboxylation or decarboxylation. So when you heat it up, all three of them, and I'm only speaking of Delta 9, Delta 8, Delta 9, Delta 10. I don't know about THCO or any of those things. But all three of them produce the same metabolite, which is COOH. So that metabolite is released from your body, and when you take a drug test, that drug test, that urine test, is testing for that metabolite to see if it's present in your urine. So if you're taking Delta 8 and Delta 10 and you take a urine test, you're going to test hot for it. And that's a big thing that a lot of vape shops aren't telling everybody when they're buying these Delta compounds. You know, they tell you, hang on to your receipt, or, you know, if you get pulled over, you need to show them that it's not Delta 9, but they're not telling them that you're going to fail a drug test if you get tested. So, in order to test for the actual or the metabolites that's identified Delta 9 versus Delta 8 or Delta 10, you need to do lab testing. And most companies, if they do a urine test, they're not really interested in sending it out to a lab because that's an increased expense. But more and more companies are getting away with the THC testing for employment, and even here in Georgia, companies are foregoing that, or, you know, doing that 10-panel test and just ignoring the THC component. But you need to actually identify the true compound that was ingested. You have to send it to a lab to do a high performance liquid chromatograph test, and that'll identify whether it's really Delta 9 or Delta 8 or Delta 10. But nobody wants to do any of that. So I bring this Delta 8 and Delta 10 up because both Delta 8 and Delta 10, if they have to contain less than 0.3% THC, but they do have a psychoactive effect to it if you take enough of it. So you can go in and buy Delta 8 or Delta 10, and you will for pain relief, but if you take enough of it, you will feel psychoactive effects like THC. There is THC in it, and there's a metabolite. The other thing I wanted to touch on back when I was talking about CBD is just because it's a broad spectrum, let me go back to that, spectrums, broad spectrum, or not so much an isolate, but a broad spectrum that's not supposed to contain any THC, undetectable or trace, it can test hot. So I knew a lot I did a lot of research on CBD, but I haven't done nearly the same amount on cannabis or marijuana. This is a topic for another time, but regrets. Relatively recently, I've realized that regrets are illogical, and go into more of that some other time. But I do regret a couple of things, maybe not doing a couple things earlier. One is riding a motorcycle. I didn't start riding until I was, I think, 41, and despite having the 2 motorcycle accidents, I think I would still ride. I wouldn't commute to, on 75 anymore, but I would still ride, maybe in the mountains. Something maybe I'd like to get back into. And the other thing I regret not doing is not trying marijuana sooner. I didn't try it until I was 47, I think. Only 2017 did I try it, and It's funny because Angela, we're on Ethan's 17 now, and we're on kid number 3, and the other ones, as they all grow up, you can't pull anything over. Even when Tyler was growing up, we always said you can't pull anything over on us, mostly because Angela. She's been there and done most of all that. Conversely, I was a relatively mild child when I was growing up. When I was in high school, and I told my parents, yeah, I'm going to the library, and it was Friday night, and most kids were, sneaking out or going whatever. I was actually going to the library. So I don't think, at least I don't remember, causing much grief for my parents growing up. But Angela's father and mother, when she was alive, would tell you a different story. So you couldn't get anything past Angela. So these days, they went through a phase of marijuana and smoking, and in hindsight, I don't know. I guess I should have paid more attention. Another funny story. I just thought about this the other day. When I was doing the podcast or the webcast, when I started doing the note cards, I thought about David Letterman always doing the note cards and throwing them at the camera. And I remember this song, something like, "Oh, the King Late Night, yeah, Dave Letterman." It was a rap song. So I looked it up the other night, and it was Tone Loc from 1989, Sheba Sheba. In 1989, I was in college, and I was walking around. I went to college, and I was in the old school rap and Run DMC and some of the, well, it's old school now, but Public Enemy. So I was walking around singing Sheba Sheba in the fraternity house, and I just went back and listened to it, and probably didn't understand 75% of the words I was saying when I was singing it back there. And then just David Letterman stuck in my head. So I thought that was funny. But one of the regrets was not trying marijuana sooner. And so today, with the Delta 8 and Delta 10 and being in Georgia, and it's available, I tried Delta 8 and Delta 10 just as a CBD supplement, and it helps. But you can get too much, and you can feel the effects of Delta 9 THC. So it's a real thing. So it just confounds me how the government says this is okay, but that's not. So in preparation for this, I went to the DEA website and found this fact sheet. In this fact sheet, it's actually Department of Justice. I'll post a link to it. But it comes up and it says, what are its overdose effects, speaking of cannabis? And it says, no deaths from overdose of marijuana have been reported. So how many deaths do we have a year from just smoking, from cancer or alcohol, drunk driving, or other illegal drug overdoses? And there are no reported deaths from this. So they go on to say, what is the legal status in the United States? Marijuana is a Schedule I substance under the Controlled Substances Act, meaning that it has a high potential for abuse, no currently accepted medical use in treatment in the United States, and a lack of accepted safety for use under medical supervision. So just with the discussion that the interview Lex had with Dr. Johnson, this is this is why it's so difficult to make any progress in treatment if they have a stranglehold on the Schedule 1. So Schedule 1, I mean, it sounds pretty serious if you don't know what the Schedule 1 drugs are. But so the other part, let me go over to this one, drug schedules. We'll take a look at them quickly. So the scheduled drugs, this is the DEA. It's an official website of the U.S. government, and here's how you know. So drug scheduling, we come down and look at Schedule 1 drugs. Substances or chemicals are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse. Some Schedule 1 drugs include heroin, lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD, marijuana, I'm not even going to try to pronounce ecstasy, methacholine, and peyote. Cannabis must be really bad to be lumped in with heroin, LSD, and X. Schedule 2 drugs are less potential for addiction, blah, blah, blah. So Vicodin, cocaine, meth, methadone, Dilaudid, I've had that. Demerol, I've had that. Oxycodone, I've had that. So I've been given Schedule 2 drugs. Well, I guess I should be happy then, because they didn't give me a Schedule 1 drug. They didn't give me cannabis. They gave me Schedule 2 drugs. Adderall, Ritalin, fentanyl. Wow. No one's ever died from any of those, overdosing from any of those. That's right, so that makes sense. Schedule 3 drugs, they go down. There's some ketamine, steroids, testosterone. Schedule 4, Xanax is in Schedule 4. Although there's no problem with Xanax. Ambien, Tramadol, have that. Ativan. And then Schedule 5 drugs, Robitussin, blah, blah, blah. So interesting, though, as an aside, it's been in the news, Joe Rogan recently talking about DMT. DMT is a Schedule 1 drug. You just got to go to a different page, the alphabetical list for it. So DMT is produced in the body, but it, too, is a Schedule 1 drug. And as far as I understand, you physically cannot overdose from DMT. You pass out before you get to the point like lethality or something like that. So Schedule 1 drug, way to go. So between testing on dogs and THCO testing on dogs, and cannabis is a Schedule 1 drug protecting us from ourselves, we should be relieved that the DEA and the FDA are on our side, right? So according to back to this other one, the cannabis fact sheet from the DEA. So they conclude, consistent therewith, the FDA and DEA have concluded that marijuana has no federally approved medical use for treatment in the United States, and thus remains a Schedule 1 controlled substance under federal law. Well, that's good to know. So in the very next sentence of the very next paragraph, natural cannabis is bad, but Marinol is a synthetic version of THC, and Marinol is used for, it says, to control nausea and vomiting in chemotherapy agents or patients, and then in AIDS patients. Marinol is a Schedule 3 drug, so it's less addictive than cocaine, and far less addictive than marijuana. Syndros is an oral THC, presumably synthetic, at least portion. That's a Schedule 2 drug. And then Epio, I don't know, is this oral solution of cannabidiol, CBD that has no more. And it is a Schedule 5 drug. So we got all these things that cannabis bad, synthetic's good. So I can't believe I forgot to put this in the recording earlier. So through the miracle of editing, I'm going to go back and add this in. But looking back at the DEA fact sheet right here, going through it, reading all through it, going down to the bottom, I see this www.getsmartaboutdrugs.com. It made me wonder if this really was a DEA fact sheet, or what the deal is with this. So I went and looked it up, and this is what I found. I got the Get Smart About Drugs website here, and it says it is an official website of the U.S. government. It redirects you to getsmartaboutdrugs.gov. So it is a government, but there's cannabis being a Schedule I drug, I would have to imagine there's very serious warnings and very serious cautions on their Get Smart About Drugs. So I found a video on there, and I want to play it. It's only about a minute and a half long, but this really drives home the point of how dangerous cannabis is. So just take a look at this.
Hey, I'm your brain. I used to be super fast, super smart, super duper. But then this guy showed up and everything got super dopey. That's marijuana. It comes from the cannabis plant, and it contains more than 500 chemicals, one of which is delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol, THC. People smoke it, eat it, inhale it, and even drink it. If someone offers you marijuana, say, "No thanks, I'm all set," or "No, I'm not into drugs," or even just, "Nah, not for me, I'm high on life." Or you could say, "What? Do you know what that stuff can do to your body? It slows your reaction time, it speeds your heart rate, and causes lung and breathing problems. And don't forget me, your brain. THC causes memory problems, delusions, and in some cases, psychosis. It has also been linked to depression and anxiety, and no one needs something else stressing them out, especially not me. So inhale this, eat this, or drink this. But don't do marijuana. Not if you care about your body and your brain. We're a part of you. Why would you want to hurt us?
Oh my gosh. That's a serious video that the DEA has put up there. The people who made that had to have been high. That's for a Schedule I drug. I didn't find anything, I didn't look for any other videos for any other Schedule I drugs, but I can't even believe that this is even up for discussion. This is just absurdity, ridiculousness. Back to where I left off. There was a meme. I wish I could find it. I don't think... the meme is Bill Murray saying that something like, the most dangerous thing about weed is getting caught with it. Well, I think the FDA and the DEA would disagree with you, Bill. So there's recently in the news, 11 Alive in Atlanta station did there's a bill, GOP, about legalization of marijuana in Georgia. And they had, I don't know if they had a hearing or they had people talking, but there's, in the article, I'll put a link to it as well. In the article, Senator Randy Robertson of Cotulla is quoted as saying, marijuana is a devastating drug. I guess we can just say whatever we want. We don't have to support it at all. And then another guy, I thought this was interesting. Another guy said, any notion that marijuana is not a gateway drug is absurd. That was Jeff Breedlove, a former drug addict with the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse. So I found this other quote. I don't know. I did get it. It's this one. Cannabis is not an entrance drug. It's an exit drug from pharmaceuticals and narcotics. And Dr. Uma, Dhanablalan. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I don't even know if she said it. I thought it was an interesting quote. I don't care if she said it or not, but it's not an entrance drug. It's not a gateway drug. It's an exit drug from pharmaceuticals. And the more I look into it, the more I believe that it's true. So I know people, despite me not having tried it until 2017, I know a lot of people, and I know young people, but I know a lot of people that have been smoking for marijuana for a long time, and they didn't try anything else, and they didn't get addicted. I mean, you know, addiction, you can argue, could they stop? And, you know, I mean, I don't know clinically the definition of addiction, but if they say they can stop, I don't know why you wouldn't believe them if they're able to function in society as normal. I think a lot of it is personality driven. Like if you have an addictive personality, you'll get hooked on stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not clinical. I don't have any idea. But these people, some of these people I know have traveled to recreational legal states, Colorado, California, and they speak of, you know, it's a novelty thing. When they first got there, they, you know, rushed to the weed shop, and it's like a, you know, kid in a candy store. But, you know, they went sightseeing, they went around, and they didn't see, it wasn't like rampant people getting high and laying around and not doing anything. People still live their lives. Making it legal, as they've shown, doesn't promote. I don't think there's increased unemployment in these states. Like people are smoking it whether it's legal or not. It's just making it legal. Just they can come out of the shadows and not have to worry about prosecution or. And I know some people that move to California that live out there, and you know they smoke, and you know, you might go out to a bar and something, but you go to a beach and you don't smell it, or one couple's smoking it and everybody else is just, it's just like cigarettes. It takes the stigma off of it, and it just becomes like a normal thing, just like, you know, drinking alcohol, but it doesn't have the stigma to it, so you don't have to skulk around and do it. But some of the other things to consider in states where it's recreationally legal are the tax implications, and I wanted to touch on that specifically related to Georgia. So I have this tax dollars right here. Okay, so potential tax dollars. Georgia is 198 million. Florida is 448 million. Tennessee is 132 million. South Carolina is 96 million. And Alabama is 92 million. So the total of all those states is $966 million. This was from an article in the Motley Fool in August of 2021. And I looked at this because I saw, I think California had over $1 billion in tax revenue in 2019. And I don't think they're reporting like rampant laziness or apathy. People are still going to work, but $1 billion in tax revenue, or I don't even know what Colorado's was, but Georgia, I mean, they got this bill that they're trying to pass, and it's just something to consider. Maybe taking lead instead of following everything, taking lead. And Motley Fool says $198 million that we're leaving on the table. But I put these other states in there because if you don't think people are traveling bordering states to California and Colorado, I mean, it's Washington, Oregon, that's a bummer because, people from Idaho are going to come over. But in Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, South Carolina, Alabama, just across the border to buy legal recreational marijuana, what kind of tourist boom would that be for Georgia? I mean, they were talking. We finally came out of the Stone Age and got casinos, and I think we did. Or maybe we didn't yet. I don't know if they're still talking the destination resorts, or maybe we didn't. I guess we didn't because we still have to go to North Carolina. We can't even come out of the Stone Age because it brings an unsavory element. The casinos bring the unsavory element, and we can't leave the people to their own devices. Yet, I just heard a commercial on the radio. I don't know where it was, but for DraftKings, for the Super Bowl. So I think they said it's going to be $9 billion. Some of these news reports are saying $9 billion bet on the Super Bowl, and DraftKings comes out with an ad that is trying to get people, pay $5 to get like $250 back. So I don't know what the 56-1 odds or something like that on future bets. You don't get that money, you get it on future bets. So you can't bet $50,000 and get whatever that is back, but it's future bets. They're letting this average. So gambling is going crazy, and the THC debate. So if we led the country or led the Southeast, let's say that, in tax revenue, if you can get any politician or anybody to argue how this doesn't make sense from a fiscal standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from a humanitarian standpoint, how is cannabis a Schedule I drug with no deaths, an underground market, people are taking it anyway, you're not getting any benefits from it. The data are there. It's, look at California, Colorado, Oregon. I don't know if I would imagine they're running a surplus in the budget. Just use them as test cases, and it seems like it's successful. Meanwhile, we're keeping all this under wraps. We're trying to do that. Meanwhile, legal THC is ruining people's lives. And by legal THC, I'm talking about the Delta 8 and the Delta 10. Now, while it's legal to purchase Delta 8 and Delta 10 in vape shops, there are some vape shops that are selling to minors. And I know this because Ethan's friend got expelled from school for having a vape at school. Now, whether it was Delta 8 or Delta 10, I don't know the specifics of it, but he had a vape, and yeah, he shouldn't have had it. Maybe you could argue that the school rules, but a zero tolerance policy on vapes it seems a little ridiculous to me to expel him and put that mark on his record, and he's got to go to an alternate school and maybe get a GED. He was in ROTC. He was a senior, so he's going to graduate, and this zero tolerance nonsense, just give him a suspension and let him back in school and let him finish his career. It's not like he brought a knife I'm not even going to get into that. But he did buy this at vape shops or at a vape shop. And I believe his parents went and talked to the vape shop. But I went in and talked to one of them, and I asked him, what happens if you get caught selling to a minor? And they said that nothing happened. I don't know if this is correct or not. This is just what the person said. If nothing happens to the shop, the individual employee that sold to the minor gets in trouble. And I didn't know what he couldn't go into what that meant, or he didn't know. But they have to check ID. They're supposed to check IDs. So if he did have a fake ID to buy this, then he went into the vape shop and they flashed the ID and they sold it to him, and then, well, shame on him. But if he didn't have a fake ID, it is regular ID, and the vape shop either didn't check his ID or checked it and just let it slide, then shame on them, and there's no repercussion to the vape shop. Yet that ruined his life, and you could argue causality or one didn't cause the other, but maybe if he didn't have that cartridge if he didn't sell it from the vape shop and it was Delta 8, he wouldn't have had the vape at school. That's a plausible scenario. If it wasn't nicotine, if he was only vaping for the Delta 8 or the Delta 10, then he wouldn't have had it at school. So then the vape shop theoretically should be held liable, right? If you can't, a bartender can't keep feeding people drinks knowing that they're drunk, or serve an underage person and just keep feeding them. That's just wrong. So despite these laws, the vape shops are selling to minors, and it's ruining lives. It's ruining people's lives. So I guess all this to say is that we need to realign our priorities as a society and hold the government and elected officials accountable for what's best for the citizens. If what the citizens want, take a poll, or we have the technology. We can just ask the people. You don't need to impose your morality on us because you feel cannabis is devastating. Where's the evidence? Show us the evidence. Start doing what's right for the citizens, the people that elected you. Or let's replace them. Let's get somebody. Let's get a viable candidate. I said this before. The Sovereign Party or the Humanitarian Party, or somebody just needs to step up. We'll find it. Somebody will do it with the funds. I mean, unfortunately, it all comes down to money. But how much better would life be if we all just relaxed a little bit more? So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I tried to talk about something that I think I know a little bit about. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I don't know if I can answer them or point you in the right direction. But if you liked any of this content, like I said in the beginning, please like, subscribe, and share on all the platforms. I'm trying to put this out on more platforms and to get more reach, and I really want to I'm really excited about talking to Dr. JP. He might be my first interview. But it's coming soon. It's going to get out there. I'm going to make this happen. I hope you enjoyed the transitions and the new features that I'm trying out on the software. It's kind of fun to do this. I'm going to wrap it up. I need to work on some intro and outro, maybe screens like that. But I'm going to wrap it up, get this edited, uploaded, and please share it with anybody and everybody. Just good things are coming. Talk to you soon. Till next time, live a good life.